Right, good morning everyone, we'll make a start. We have to start by reading out this statement. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being videoed. Members of the public are entitled to record the proceedings and are requested to give prior notice so that any additional measures that may assist can be put into place. Any member of the public who has any concerns should raise them now. Right, moving on. Item 1, apologies for absence, but I think we've got a full house. So, item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. No, nobody's indicating. Item 3, the minutes, which are the minutes of the 17th of October. Any questions, or are they agreed as a true record? I see, can everybody show just so it's clear that we agree with them? Right, thank you. Item 4, public question time. I believe there are a number of questions. There is an order. So the first question is from Stephen Malloy. Right. There is a written answer that will be provided to Mr. Malloy. So if we move on. Question 2. Oh, that's all part of Mr. Malloy, I believe. The Charles Green. Question from Charles Green. Is Charles Green here? I am.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the consultation on preferred sites, agenda item 8, and the written question should be in front of you all in your papers, so I should just give a summary of it. The question concerns the figure work that gets put before you, and we itemised 4 examples of significant concern. Firstly, I asked a question at your meeting on 2nd May, and you may remember that I also presented copies of the book to Councillor Macy. Councillor Lawrence. A freedom of information request was needed in the end, and that revealed that the relevant table had been miscalculated and was out by a factor of 250%. Instead of the published figure of 288 hectares, the correct figure from the productivity growth scenario should have been that the council needs only 115 hectares of employment land. No wonder the table looked so odd to us. Secondly, we continue to be concerned that the analysis of consultation responses is being misrepresented. Town and parish councils and members of the public are overwhelmingly against the high housing targets. And yet, in the 5-page report before you, paragraph 5.1, there is the statement that in most cases, a majority of respondents supported the preferred approach published at that time. It is only because of the inclusion of responses from the development sector, many of which were exact duplicates of each other, that it is possible to make such a statement. Thirdly, the high targets are, of course, likely to be storing up trouble for the future. The higher they are, the less chance there is of delivering them, with the risk that the council will fall foul of government sanctions. It would be more prudent to adopt a housing target that is nearer to the minimum required by government. And fourthly, turning now to figure work before you today in the main 224-page consultation document, it states at paragraph 1.22 that these preferred sites have been carefully assessed using a detailed assessment framework which has been applied consistently across the county. And yet the proposals for the rural hub villages show that nearly 1/3 of them are earmarked for growth of over 40%. that does not seem consistent across the county, considering that the towns are earmarked for average growth of 25%. In view of these various concerns, the question is therefore a simple one. Has any of the figure work or assessment framework for the local plan review been subject to review independently of the officers, particularly by the Place Overview Scrutiny Committee? Thank you.
There's a written response I included in the pack somewhere. Have you had the response?
No.
Oh, Rob, you did like that.
I was expecting a verbal response. That's the form now.
Yeah. No,
I don't get a supplementary.
No. In terms of that, no, I've got, I think I can go through the response that we prepared. I think in terms of the actual question that you've just submitted, it's as stated on 8.1 on page 4 of the Cabinet report. The local plan member group meets regularly to help officers shape the new local plan. However, the detailed evidence and site assessment methodology used to inform this latest stage of the local plan review have not been reviewed independently of the officers at this stage. This is the role of the formal public examination of the plan, which will be conducted by a government planning inspector during 2020. I wanted to pick up on the 4 points you've commented on as well. Looking at those, in terms of the growth, council officers have already had lengthy correspondence with yourself about this issue. It's already been explained that in May 2018, council chose not to use the productivity growth scenario and strategy for local plan review. The points again raised at this stage are therefore not relevant to either the proposed local plan strategy or the preferred local allocations now presented to Cabinet. The preferred approach is actually based on a strategy of balanced growth to deliver a sufficient increase in jobs to balance the preferred housing requirement to 2036. The preferred allocations now presented to Cabinet seek to achieve this strategy and to contribute to a step change in the growth of the Shropshire economy. Looking at some of the other comments, Shropshire Council is required to consider consultation responses submitted by developments of the community, including the development industry. We're also required to consider the needs of the wider community who have chosen to respond to the consultation. The Council's analysis considers all the consultation responses received, and any decisions taken using the proportion of responses received would most certainly represent a distortion of reality and would therefore be at risk of challenge through the plan examination process and potentially a subsequent legal challenge. You've raised before and then you've raised again about the scale of the planned growth. Within the preferred scale of distribution development consultation last year, our council explained that we proposed high levels of growth at 28,750 dwellings will help support the long-term sustainability of the county. This level of growth also provides an opportunity to respond to specific development opportunities, increase the delivery of family and affordable housing, support our wider aspirations such as increased economic growth and productivity and increased education opportunities and the upskilling of communities. Development on large strategic sites requires significant lead-in times and therefore would be inappropriate to place too great a reliance on such sites to achieve the proposed housing requirement for Shropshire, particularly at this stage in the review process where detailed assessments of strategic sites are yet to be undertaken. This will be subject to the future consultation. And finally, on the distribution of the growth, the new local plan provides for 18 years growth. The distribution of growth assumes that over 70% of that will take place in Shrewsbury and Shropshire's market towns. In the rural area, proposed community hubs are considered to be sustainable locations for rural growth. The guideline for each settlement has been informed by a professional judgment by qualified and experienced planning policy officers, taking into account various factors including the services and facilities available, the size of the settlement and opportunities and constraints present. The local plan process will provide further opportunities to comment on this preferred approach. I hope that addresses comments and the actual question that you put forward.
I was still hoping for an explanation of how that error, that question 1 error arose.
No, we don't have a comeback, sorry. We're on to a question from Mr. Julian Francis.
Malcolm Andrew on the Vice Chair.
Press the, that's it.
Malcolm Andrew on the Vice Chair, speaking on behalf of Mr. Francis on behalf of the Ireland Rural Protection Group.
Okay.
Again, I believe that all members have had our detailed explanation behind our questions.
Speak up, please.
Speak up. Sorry?
Can I
Speak up.
speak
Right.
closer
You
to
need to
it?
talk
That's
into
it,
it.
speak right
Okay.
into it.
So I believe that the members have all had our detailed explanation behind our two questions. And I'm just looking at the written response that's been released this morning. So we're pleased that the Table 10 is going to be released for public consultation as part of this review. With regard to the methodology, we're not contesting the methodology, but we are contesting the detail within it about how the threshold has to be determined and the wording relaxed.
I'm being a bit
based on
relaxed
the-
here because that isn't really the question, is it?
Based on the Table 10. So we are asking the Cabinet to review those thresholds and how those are set within the document rather than the whole document that you have last document. We are concerned about the overall if these are just left unresolved until examination stage, which then puts the plan being at risk of being unsound at the late stage rather than being resolved these minor issues now as we all know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rob, Councillor Rob Macy will respond.
I think in terms of, as you say, you've got the written response that we've provided, so I don't know how much I need to add to that.
Can I suggest you might want to meet separately to go into some of the detail of the questions, and I would suggest you have a meeting separately, that you come here one day when there's a bit of time to go into detail in some of these and discuss them properly.
Well, we have gone through the detail in our letter. What we're asking is that Cabinet make the decision to review those or ask the office to review those thresholds.
Okay.
rather than the whole document.
We'll look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item D is a question from Mr. Len Sambrook, Chair of Charles Arkle Parish Council.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me to come this morning. My question relates to the SIL local fund distribution. And I note that the recommendation before Cabinet this morning acknowledges the failings by the Council in communication and, more important, consultation, which is good. However, Shropshire Council issued to the parishes a 3-page briefing note germane to this Council meeting at just after 4:30 on Monday. That left less than 2.5 hours working hours for consideration and response before this question had to be submitted. The paper refers to SIL as complex, and putting this complex document out when Shropshire chose to does not seem much like good communication to me, nor does it look like consultation. It feels a bit like contempt. Anyway, I do believe that any parish and town council, I do not believe, sorry, that any parish and town councils were consulted by Task and Finish prior to the submission of the report to Cabinet on the 23rd of May this year. Given the lack of meaningful consultation, or indeed any consultation, and the failure to act on recommendation 6C from the minutes of that meeting, no weight can be attached to the 23rd of May recommendations, and effectively they must be disregarded. And we should start again. To restore any faith into the SIL review process and ensure genuine consultation, parish council representatives must be co-opted as full members onto the relevant Task and Finish groups immediately. I also believe that no consultation process was carried out prior to the 2015 resolution referred to in the briefing note. If the opposite interpretation of the 2015 resolution is correct, there is no question that it has the effect of taking SIL local away from parishes. This fundamental step was not communicated in any way and was not the subject of any consultation. The parishes were never told this had happened. I would ask every councillor present to ask themselves whether you feel comfortable with the approach the council has taken regarding SIL local and the parishes over the last year, and if you do not, What are you doing about it? Ultimately, councillors, not officers, make policy, and that is patently not what is happening here. My question is, could you please identify specifically the SIL local projects carried through since 2015 that were funded in reliance on the officer's interpretation of the 2015 resolution? And could you please identify the projects and which sums came out of the SIL local for the parish and where the project concern took place? Sorry, let me say that again. Which sums came out of the SIL local for the parish where the project concern took place, and which funds came from the SIL local of a different parish? And please identify the parish's concern. Thank you.
Are you going to respond, or would you like me to?
No?
Well, I think we're going to have to give you a written response to some of the detail of what you're asking, but the approvals were a speed reduction through Ashparva in Whitchurch Rural Parish Council, provision of a track to Lowerfield on Aston Green, which is Hope Say Parish Council, Dorrington...
Sorry, Councillor, are you answering my question there? Mine was what had been spent using SIL local from other parishes.
Well, I'm trying to answer the question that says, can you please specifically identify the SIL local projects carried through since 2015 which were funded in reliance on officers' interpretation of the 2015 resolution?
And that is actually taking SIL funds for strategic projects, not in the parish where the SIL development took place. Anyway, I think a written answer is
I think a written answer is going to be far easier.
Okay, could I have a time scale on when that written answer comes? Because I've been waiting for a very long time for a lot of written answers.
How quick do you think we can get a written answer? Hopefully within a week or two. I think we can get some of the questions. This isn't a discussion.
I know it's not a discussion, but please appreciate everybody and the audience. I have been waiting for specific answers to specific questions since for 3 months now.
We will get them as soon as it's practical. No, sorry, no,
it's only, can the answers be circulated? Need the answers be circulated?
Yeah, they will be, yeah.
Okay, it was just in case it wasn't picked up, the director did say that we can do it in the next week.
Next week. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. So we're on to question F. Mr. Neil Henderson, Charles Harcourt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Neil Henderson, Charles Harcourt Parish Council. My question is primarily for Mr. Macy as the relevant portfolio holder. As a parish councillor, I've been very surprised to learn about the current SIL application, and in particular how SIL local funds collected from development in the various parishes are distributed. I believe that Shropshire have not approved a single application since Mr. Nutting came to Charles Arkle last December, at which point he enthusiastically encouraged the parish council to apply to use their SIL local to defray the cost of our proposed new children's playground. Now, if that is not correct, could you please identify for me the applications which have actually been approved and the ones that were rejected? If no applications have been approved, could you please explain why? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to do so. In terms of the schemes that have been approved, there's been 5 of them, and those were the ones that Councillor Nutting was just listing. But I'll just complete the list because he didn't get us the 5. Which was speed reduction through Ashparva, Whitchurch Rural Parish Council, provision of track to Lowerfield on Aston Green, Hope Say Parish Council, Dorrington Multi-Use Games Area, Converton Parish Council, replacement of Russell's Meadows Sports Pavilion, Church Stretton Town Council, and provision of streetlights and Clamley Parish Council. Those have all come forward. Schemes which were not supported were a road safety in Harmer Hill, Middle Broughton and Harmer Hill Parish Council, Stoke-upon-Tern Parish Cemetery Extension, Stoke-upon-Tern Parish Council, Charles Arkle play area equipment renewal, ourselves as a council, and the upgrade to street lighting from Ellesmere Town Council. These projects were not supported because they were not considered to be infrastructure required as a direct result of development, and or they were critical infrastructure needs in the area, which take precedence to still local funding as agreed by Cabinet in 2015. And currently, just for fullness, currently we've got 2 more expressions of interest currently under consideration. Right, that's it. Thank you. We move on.
G, question from Mr. Adam Piper, is it Piper?
Yeah, it's me.
Sorry, I'm not very good on the
Go for it. Good morning and thank you, Mr. I've got only 2 quick questions that don't take you too much time. Then, first question is, I think, special about the plans, big town plan and housing development plans. I'm looking on that briefly. I'm only human, maybe I missed something, but I don't understand, as an ordinary member of the public, I don't understand why in both plans nothing mentioned about any schools, about any GPs, about public transport or any proper hospital infrastructures. Because, however, when you look at it, we are human. If we want to make our town better, we have to think about that issues. And my other question is specifically about big town plan, especially for the flax mill. In case, maybe not in case, but did Shropshire Council and local MP secured any other funds, sources of funds, to carry out that plans after March 2019, after the Brexit? Because, as we know, both plans, they partial funded from UE grants. And what's happened after the March? That job will be carried on, or what's happened after?
there's a written, I don't know, isn't it?
I'll take that meeting account.
I suppose.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to cover both off actually, because I think what we're discussing later with the big town plan is relevant. You know, as you stated in your question, from Muckle. I don't know if you've seen a copy. I've got a written answer which I can give you a copy of, but I'll give you the overview. Well, one thing I want to be clear about is that the Big Town Plan is it's a high-level framework plan. So some of the detail that you do question are not within there at this stage, but it's the high-level framework we're looking at. The parts most relevant to your comments are around house building, without associated plans for GPs, public transport, proper hospital infrastructure, and this is covered in the balancing growth section within the plan. It's been a topic that's been discussed at length over both consultations. Our aim is to promote a better placemaking and development plan on the edge of town. It's to encourage better networks of how these things fit together, and that's the whole purpose of the Big Town Plan, is to, you know, we put this through later, if it passes through Cabinet, it's a document that people will regard as they plan the additional things that come later. In the case of a no-deal Brexit, the local authority are looking at other sources of funding. There's good news recently in the autumn statement that there's a £675 million fund for future high streets. So we're looking at that. We were fortunate to be one of only 5 towns visited by the MHCLG in the work undertaken before that funding was given out. So we were giving good input into that. And on the last part with regards to the flax mill, we've worked extensively over the last 18 months with the local enterprise partnership, who cover Shropshire, Hereford, Telford and Wrekin. And they have an infrastructure funding that isn't linked to the EU, and we're very mindful of, if we need to fill the the shortfalls of gap funding, the left would be the area we could look to on the flax mill.
In short of the question, you don't have secured anything yet. And the time is needed.
We haven't, Brexit hasn't happened yet, so we haven't secured it yet, but we have things in place.
This isn't a debate.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, so that's public questions. Item 5 is member questions, and there's a member from Councillor Julian Dean.
Thank you. So this question is related to winter maintenance, and in particular looking after pavements and pedestrians in the winter. Last winter we had a severe episode in December, quite a few injuries. Following that there was a bit of fuss was made, and the town council in Shrewsbury in particular worked together with Shropshire Council to look after things, and subsequent to that a motion was put through full council. So this was really to follow up where we've got to, in particular with regard to developing both the snow warden scheme and some joint work with the town and parish councils. So if I can hear the reply, then I can ask a supplementary.
Well, you've got the written response.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can read it out if you want, but I think Councillor Cairwhile will respond if you want more information.
Okay.
I can respond.
No. Okay. Steve.
Julian, you've got responses. Please, if you need any further information, please contact me directly and I will update you. But due to workload within the highways, as you can see by the response, there is going to be training taken care of beginning of next year. And it purely is down to the workload of doing it. And I'm sure Claire wants to say something.
Yeah. I think Claire wanted to ask some questions as well about this. Separately. Right.
Okay, so I understand. So it's quite disappointing that we're going to wait for another winter before the joint working with the scheme is put together.
Sorry, Julian, I didn't say that. I said train.
Okay, but the scheme for snow wardens, your answer specifically says that the scheme for snow wardens is something that will be developed towards next winter rather than this winter. But my subsequent question is really in terms of the joint working with the town councils, because that isn't addressed in the answer. In particular, in the light of an email I've had from Helen Ball, the clerk at Shrewsbury Town Council, where she says, we have contacted Highways to see whether we are needed this year, and they have advised that Kier has the winter maintenance in hand, and we would not be required. We will just concentrate on our sites. We haven't been made aware of any proposed communications with residents and businesses. That doesn't seem to me to be taking the initiative to get the town councils to do what they so helpfully did last year in terms of looking after pedestrians. So my question is, why are we not taking up the offer from the town councils?
Julie, could you leave that with me? I will get back to you verbally this week.
Thank you.
Okay. Ben.
Thank you very much, Leader. As you will all be aware, I've chaired the SIL Task and Finish Group, and one of the recommendations from there was for much better and swifter communications with the town and parishes. I noticed that there are a lot of town and parish councillors here. So my first question to the portfolio holder, Mr. Macy, is what is he going to do about it? What are the time frames? And is there any likelihood of extra resource being put in to actually help resolve this situation? Thank you.
Right, Councillor Macy.
It's probably be a combination response of I'll answer part, and then I might ask the director just to add a little to it. In terms of the work that the scrutiny committee's done, it's been extremely helpful to us. You'll see that the report later on actually includes some of the recommendations they've made about, not specifically those points about how do we communicate better and so on. I think in terms of timeline, I think it is important that everyone gets a sense of where this is going, what timelines involved, how we get to decisions and so on. And that's something that's currently being prepared and can be circulated once it's finished, so that everybody is clear this is what we're working to, this is where we feed in and so on. You've already heard the briefing note went out at the start of this week in terms of addressing some of the queries we've had around SIL. There are further briefing notes coming. For example, the next topic that we've had raised a lot is neighbourhood fund, and actually what can towns and parish councils do with the neighbourhood fund, what is it, and so on. There will be a briefing note coming out on that, and they're already with the town and parish councils, and we've said there will be workshops and meetings around these. So we are looking at how do we proactively get everybody on the same page, certainly in terms of one of the things that's come up is certainly the language we're using, as well as how is it operating, what is the current policy, and so on, to give everyone that assurance that we are not moving away from, we made the commitment of we will see a pattern of growth across the county, and we will look to support the infrastructure across the county. That is something that we still are doing. And there's plenty of partners that play into that, whether it's other public sector colleagues, it's ourselves, it's the town and parish councils. We do need clear plans for areas that they know are there, what is in them, how they're going to be delivered, and so on, to the best of the information that's available at the time. And that is absolutely what is driving where we want to get to with this. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that we're moving away from that. So, in terms of the timelines, they will be circulated as soon as they've been finalised. That's a case of just making sure we've got the right resource in the right place to do so. And really, it's whether the director wants to add anything on top of that.
Just very quickly, just to build on that, I think it's really helpful that the Task and Finish group sort of flagged the importance of the place plan process. And one of the things that we're looking at the moment is just putting some resource together so that relatively early in the new year we can kick off a process with all of the place plan areas, kind of just revisiting all of their local priorities and what we see a kind of investment and development needs coming down the track. So we have a kind of fresh conversation about how collectively we plan for that in a joint way. So I think that's a very helpful kind of entree into a process which hopefully is going to start very early in the new year.
Yeah, so there were, my concern is that there will be real conversations with the parishes prior to you putting your amended place plans on the website.
Just to be clear, absolutely. I think this is an opportunity to, if you like, restart those conversations, to get into a place of common purpose where we're all with clarity, understanding what the challenges are, how we can jointly address them. So absolutely.
And recognising the importance of parish councils.
Implicit in that statement.
Yes, thank you very much. So the second question is about the SAMDEV. I didn't know whether to ask it now or when SAMDEV was being discussed, and I will put it out there. What I think would be very useful is if we had some assurances from Cabinet that there would be a task and finish group to look at the mechanism and the point system in which the 40 hubs were identified.
You're talking about the local plan review?
Yes, I am, yes, and I'm asking it now. Because talking to parishes there does seem some confusion, and I think it's important that there's a level playing field and that people do have the opportunity, especially the members of the Task and Finish group, to actually look at that. And I could highlight a discrepancy that I feel is relevant, if you like, but
I think I don't want to go into too much
detail
because this is
that.
A consultation that will go out, and we don't want to predict what the response to the consultation will be before we actually put it out.
No, but I do think it is important to have a look at that and the rationale behind that.
Yeah, we'll give some thought to how we can do that. Yeah.
The only thing I want to add to that, and it goes back to the earlier responses, alongside the consultation document there will be a whole host of extra information that is getting released, covering a number of areas of the plan. So perhaps it's the case of when you've seen what's released and so on, that gives the full picture of what we're consulting on, but it also gives more of a picture from officers what they've considered.
Yes, I think though that the rationale needs to be explained more fully, and it's about having these conversations with the parish councils.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we move on. Item 6 is scrutiny items. I don't think there are any. So item 7 is meeting housing need in Shropshire. Councillor Macy. He's a busy chap today.
I will apologise, you're hearing so much from me today. I will refer to some notes throughout the day because nearly every item is mine. Meeting housing need in Shropshire is the report in front of you. Shropshire's housing market over recent years has performed extremely well in terms of the number of new homes we've delivered in the county. With a strong local plan, housing land supply well in excess of the 5-year requirement and adopted policies, our county clearly continues to be an attractive place to live. But, and it is a big but, we all know and can cite examples of unmet needs that exist right across our county. The report talks about the research that's been undertaken, and we're all aware of the affordability gaps that exist in the county, the lack of key worker housing and an ageing demographic looking for more appropriate accommodation, to name but a few of the needs our county has right now. Since the release of the report, I'm pleased to say that comments from a range of individuals and organisations welcoming what is being proposed and the suggested approach have been received. Given the number of unprompted ideas already received, if we decide to proceed, then there will have to be an element of reality about our programme, but I'm confident that working alongside other partners we have a chance to make a real difference. The report clearly outlines a range of positive outcomes that can be achieved for residents, communities, our own council and other partners. I hope with the support of Cabinet and Council colleagues that we can keep this key initiative moving. By accepting this report and its recommendation, Cabinet sets a clear aspiration for Shropshire Council to play an active role in meeting the housing and development needs of our communities. I think it's a very clearly and well written report, and with that I'd move the recommendations contained within it.
Right, I'm happy to second that to get it so it's live. Roger has indicated, Roger Evans, and Harry Taylor next. Right, so Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome the report and the main thrust behind it. It's something that I've advocated for years, that we should be out there building, helping develop houses where people want them, of the type they want them, as per the recent consultation that Shropshire has carried out and continues to carry out. There are parts of this report, though, that does concern me. There has been a cross-party group looking at this. The word cross-party does not appear in this report at all. And we've tried to go for consensus to reach how we're going to build and what we're going to build, but it doesn't seem to be here. And in the actual recommendations, it says develop the business case, etc., with the appropriate director and the portfolio holder. So I'm not sure how members in the future will actually feed into this, because if it doesn't, it's going to fail. We need a cross-party, a unified approach to build the type of houses where we want them and of a type we want them. I am concerned as well, in 110 for example, it says no cost to the council. I thought we were going for cross-subsidy houses, but also building houses to rent. I'm not interested in the market. I want to have houses where we want them, of a type we want them, and to be able to be paid and afforded by the average resident, not 7.9 times their income, which is where we are at present. And there are numbers of households where there's 2 and 3 generations living in the same house, because the availability of 2 and 3 bedroom houses are not being built. And I think that is where we should be concentrating. And I'm disappointed it doesn't seem to refer to that. It seems to be looking at providing finance and revenue for the council. We need houses where they are needed. Thank you, Chairman.
Harry Taylor was next, then Councillor.
Thank you, Leader. In a similar vein, the Labour Group support this council building houses, but only if they're kept for rent and not sold for a quick buck. We think they should be kept on the books as a social asset for the people and as a financial asset in the long term for this council. Paragraph 110 talks about future development being based on generating a good income stream and major savings as being the guiding philosophy for this council to build houses. But you've identified a serious housing need, but if the approach is going to be based purely on making a profit and based on cuts instead of the needs of residents and the people of this county, then clearly there's no difficulties.
I'm not sure quite where you read all that into what's in the report, but anyway, Councillor Nick Lawrence.
Key worker housing, love it. Thank you for mentioning it because it's so important to economic growth. I'm somewhat surprised by Councillor Evans within his speech that not interested in the market. I'm very much interested in the market identifying what we need to build and where we need to build it. And I'd ask Councillor Macy to perhaps, can you elaborate a little bit on what data you've identified so far around the key worker? Because for me, in my role, it's been so important that big manufacturers in Shropshire who want to expand but struggle with having key worker housing available in their localities. I'd be really interested to have some more data on that, please. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so do you want me to?
Well, yeah, do that, and then we'll see if there's any more.
Roger, I'm assuming, is it the housing member group you're referring to?
Yes.
I mean, that's not specifically looked at this item as such. It has looked at the need, and the paper about how we're identifying need and so on certainly plays into that. But this is something that I'm taking your points about how will members feed into this. Well, we're setting out quite clearly that yes, we are developing an outline business case. That will come to council for a decision. No decision will be made about council. And actually I can offer you some more assurance around that actually we're looking where this can feed into the current scrutiny calendar to have some pre-scrutiny done before it reaches council in December. So absolutely members will have the chance to feed into this and to put their views forward and to test out some of the things we're putting forward. You refer to the affordability of housing and so on, and you say we need the right houses in the right places. Well, the Right Homes, Right Places initiative that we've recently launched is already working towards that, and I'm hopeful the communities can play a big part in that, and we can make use of local knowledge. Actually, when you're referring to things like the affordability ratios between people's average wage and their housing, in some areas of the county, the data is actually showing us that can be over 11 times what the average wage is. So, but that does vary across the county. I think going to that point of we know where we need the right housing, that is exactly the approach we're suggesting, is that we use all the information available to us. We use all the data that we have to identify those. And yes, we are suggesting that this will have quite a wide portfolio of different things that we're offering, but the outcomes we can achieve are what we're going to be focusing on in those areas. So we want clear outcomes on the back of those. Harry, going to your point, to restrict ourselves just to a single model of and type of housing and the way that we're delivering that completely goes against all the data that we're seeing coming through. What is asked for is we are a big county. We have lots of different needs, representing the towns, the villages across the county. We've already referenced some of the different challenges we have. We can't meet all of the challenges with just one prescriptive way of going about this. And we hope that during the scrutiny and the further decisions council will make, we will be showing the evidence that we've got for this and how this argument has been made to do this. Nick, in terms of the key worker housing and so on, and that is part of the drive around some of the data here, is we are already out and speaking to employers. We have different people across the public sector, private employers and so on, that are all saying the same thing to us of we need our employees to be able to afford housing in the area. If you look ahead to the preferred options plan, that is something, and as you know from the economic growth plan, we want more people working close to where they live. That cuts down on commuting, that reduces stress on other parts of infrastructure and so on as well. So I hope you see that this is really leading this thread through all the items today of we have got to get this right, and that goes back to the previous conversation of we've got to have the right conversation about all of this so everybody is clear how this is all fitting together, what do we need in the areas, and this comes back to delivering the right things. So I will take from all of your comments though, I do thank you for the support for this initiative. As we say, it's something that has been talked about for a little while, and I think we do need to get on with it and start meeting the needs that we've already identified exist now. So, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I might have missed it, but I didn't hear the words about working with other groups or other members to actually, prior to the paper,
we said it goes through the scrutiny process.
Well, it doesn't say that in the recommendations. If it's in the recommendations and included, then okay. As I see it, it doesn't. But reference was made about the housing group of members, whether that's the group that looks after it or whatever. I'm relaxed about it, but I do say, look, we do need to have cross-party in this. We are supportive, however, we need to be at the table during those discussions prior to the paper going to December. Whether it's scrutiny or whatever, but nothing in the paper actually indicates that.
I hear what you're saying. Our problem here is we can't say to scrutiny, you must do this, that and the other. With scrutiny, you have to say they want to do it. And I'm sure they will want to look at this. The only thing I would say on the debate is, and I'm looking at Harry when I say this isn't trying to turn the clock back to be the old council housing in the way it was in the past. This is doing a much wider idea where you have a variety of options for how houses can be occupied, whether it be various rent and lease arrangements. But also, if we can build houses to sell at the lower end of the market, 2-bed houses for 130,000 or 140,000 in this county, wouldn't that be better so that we get people out of the rented sector and to own their own houses? And that will be part of what we will try to achieve with this. So it will be a mix. It won't be the old council housing stock. It will be a mix of housing aimed mainly at the lower end and key workers, but also at the older people as well. You know, because we have a real problem in adult social services. And if we can arrange what I call the old-fashioned group dwelling schemes with people, you know, a nurse or a warden on site who will help to look after people and keep them out of the social care system, that would work well for the council. Yes, it does have financial advantages to the council by doing it that way, and I make no apologies for that because I think that's the way to do it. So it isn't just the old-fashioned council houses, we are looking at a wide range. Yeah.
All I'll say on that is that we don't disagree long-term with these houses that you're building being sold off as long as they're replaced. So there's such a short-term need that we don't think they should be sold off in the short term. They should be kept for rent.
I'm sure we're not miles apart on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only bit I'd refer it to is you'll see in the report that we've got a housing stock options review going on. This is dovetailed with that in terms of timing and considerations and so on, so that's not being lost, but that is a separate piece of work that complements this and is ongoing. So.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think what I would say is this is just putting the bones of the idea of the housing company into place. There will be, I'm hoping there'll be a much fuller report for council in December, and I'm looking at Mark Barrow when I say that, and he's nodding and indicating it will. I mean, the poor guy's only been in post for 5 weeks, isn't it? You know, we're giving him this big job of sorting this out. So I think he needs a week more or 2 more, you know, but I am expecting at the December meeting there to be a fully fleshed report on how this will start to go forward. I think that's fair comment, isn't it?
Just to confirm, yes, we're aiming for an outline business case for December, and then hopefully get to a final business case for February, and then hopefully we get to delivery next year.
Right. I think that sounds good. Right. Oh, Roger then.
Only a quick one, Chairman. The Cabinet can set its own task and finish group up. It doesn't need to go by scrutiny.
Well, yeah, I'll think like that. Yeah, I'll see. So, just so we're clear, you'd welcome a cross-party task and finish group to look on how this housing company could go forward.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give that some thought. Right. Okay. Right. There are some recommendations on page 6. Can I see if those are all supported by Cabinet, please? Right, that's clearly supported. Right, thank you. Item 8, consultation on preferred sites for the Shropshire Local Plan Review. Councillor Macy.
Thank you, Leader. This will be a bit more of a lengthy introduction to this because, as you can tell from the 224-page document that we put forward and the report, it is a weighty subject. I think following on from what we just talked about and about having a clear plan for development and so on, and we've been very good at delivering so far, It's just, I'm not going to go back over the whole purpose of the local plan and so on. It's more going to look at where we're at now. In terms of this, we're at the third significant stage for public and stakeholder involvement in the partial review of our Shropshire local plan. The national regulations require that we maintain an up-to-date local plan and to help deliver our local needs. Failing to maintain an up-to-date plan risks undermining our ability to maintain local control over planning decisions, which have been referred to previously at this meeting. An updated project plan as such, called the Local Development Scheme, which describes our timetable for this, was approved by this Cabinet on the 2nd of May. And the current consultation forms the stage described in that as targeted engagement on preferred options, October 2018 and April 2019. We consulted on this strategy a year ago in October 2017. We established the items I've referred to in some of the public responses. We were looking at a housing growth guideline of 28,750 dwellings. We are assuming that balanced growth by providing for the delivery of 300 hectares of employment development, establishing an urban-focused distribution, which assumes that most development will take place in Shropshire town, larger towns and villages, highlighting the potential need to release greenbelt land and develop strategic sites to support long-term sustainable development. But it continues to strictly control new open market housing in the countryside while supporting new affordable housing for local needs and small-scale employment opportunities in appropriate locations. So, in terms of the proposed consultation, consultation sets out a draft development guidelines and development boundaries for each of the 26 named assessments which form part of Shropshire's settlement hierarchy, including those proposed to be identified as community hubs. It also includes mapping, which identifies around 70 preferred sites to deliver the preferred scale and distribution of housing and employment growth during the period to 2036, and outlines a new housing policy which is intended to help deliver housing solutions which more closely match our local housing needs. So going back to the references already made in the last report. Consultation represents the outcome of a great deal of work. Around 2,000 sites have been identified by the Council for potential allocation, including responses to a call for sites in January of last year. The preferred sites have been carefully selected following a detailed assessment which has been applied consistently across the county. The process has used available evidence and specialist advice from both council officers and consultant studies to assess the suitability of each site. A summary of the assessment methodology will be made available on the council's webpage during the consultation. So that's a fact I referred to in the public answers. Policy direction on housing. While Shropshire Council has adopted a positive and proactive approach to delivering housing growth, this is not always in practice delivered housing which helps to meet the local needs. In qualitative terms, we've had a tendency for the type of housing that reflects what the market can sell, which is for larger detached properties. However, our county is acknowledged as having a low wage economy, and such housing is there often beyond the means of local employees. This represents to us a significant risk to economic growth, as there's a clear mismatch between the housing needs and the housing options we currently have available. The Housing Member Advisory Group is working closely with officers to identify and shape a range of proactive interventions that Shropshire Council could adopt to more closely manage these aspects of housing, alongside ensuring a sufficient quantity of housing is delivered so we don't fall foul of government regulations. The policy direction is outlined in the preferred sites consultation and provides an opportunity, as we see it, to test local opinion about one of the approaches we could take to tackling these. The only other couple of items I feel I should mention is the Greenbelt Review. Consistent with the recommendations of the Sandev Planning Inspector in 2015, Shropshire Council commissioned an independent Greenbelt Review which examines potential areas to be removed or added to the Greenbelt where this can be justified against potential alternatives. The The outcomes of this work has helped inform the identification of land for both development during the new plan period to 2036 and for the long-term safeguarding the development of future plans beyond 2036. So we're talking a long way into the future with some of this. The only other part is gypsy and traveller sites. As well as making a provision for the traditional bricks and mortar dwellings, national planning policy places a requirement on us as local authorities to provide for permanent and transit site accommodation needs for gypsies and travellers over the plan period. Whilst some general provision has been made in recent years through expansion of our own existing council sites, some requirements remain, and in order to seek to provide a range of deliverable options for all types of these sites, a specific call for these sites will be included as part of the forthcoming consultation. Just in terms of when it's going to run for information, the consultation will run for a total of 9 weeks. It will run from the 29th of this month, so the 29th of November, until the 31st of January 2019. Consultation documents will be made available on the Shropshire Council website, and we will still have copies available at libraries and council offices in the main towns. Copies of the evidence-based documents which have helped to inform the preparation of this, such as the Greenbelt Review, Landscape and Visual Sensitivity Study, will also be published on the council web pages during the consultation period. A significant number of organisation individuals, some of which I am sure are in the room today, have already registered with the council to be notified directly of the publication of these consultation documents by email. Officers expect to continue to engage directly with individual parish and town councils during the consultation period to help them explore the implications of the proposed approaches for their locality. Electronic responses are encouraged. As a council, we are very much trying to move that direction to reduce the printing and distribution costs and to reduce the time that we spend collating and analysing the paper responses. The consultation responses will be used to inform the next stages of the local plan review, with further targeted consultation on strategic sites planned during spring 19, which we previously talked to Cabinet about. This will be followed by formal consultation on a full pre-submission version of the revised local plan in late autumn 2019, after which the Council expects to formally submit the local plan together with any formal objections for examination by the planning inspector in December 2019. And with that, I'll move the report and the recommendations.
Right. Well, I'll second it. I know Councillor Nick Bardsley is indicated, and
Can I just invite Adrian Cooper as our planning policy officer to join the
see him
table as well.
hiding in the
Some of the questions may be very technical, and I would appreciate it.
Right. Nick is first.
Thank you, Leader. Can I just say, as a local member, that I think the approach adopted by Adrian and the officer team is very much to be commended. I think that sort of careful consultation prior to the official consultation is extraordinarily helpful. I think, speaking on behalf of the two parishes where I was involved, one was a meeting with Adrian Cooper and the other with Eddie West, just a bit surprised that there was no discussion about the proposed changes to the exception site policy. I think the way, and I appreciate it out of consultation, and the final wording may be different, but it would be very helpful to have some reassurance that this isn't opening the door to driving a coach and horses through what was said by officers that, if I can put it crudely, in return for a welcoming and helpful attitude by parish councils towards development at the hubs, extending development boundaries and so on, that outside the development hubs, if community clusters didn't find flavour, you wouldn't get lots of sporadic development in the open countryside. And it seemed to be one interpretation of the way it's worded at the moment is that an unscrupulous developer could come along with a proposal, quotes for affordable housing that was actually going to be, you know, a big housing estate in the middle of structured rural countryside. Thank you, Chair. Sorry,
I'll ask Adrian to respond in a minute. But I would first comment that I think the officers have done a tremendous amount of work, Adrian and Eddie West and various other officers, going out and talking to town and parish councils. And actually, I thank the town and parish councils for the welcome they've given our planning officers to discuss this. It's, you know, because it's quite an impressive document that now it is before us, and it does set things out very clearly. But in terms of exception sites, where are we going?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for your comments. In fact, you've got most of the policy team in the room today. I think all 5 of us are probably here. So, yeah, on this, it's about timing. I think this issue, what you're seeing in terms of that policy direction on that specific housing delivery mechanism is a very early incarnation, and it will undoubtedly require refinement to address the sorts of issues that are raised. And part of the reason, as the report says, is to put it out there, let's test it and see what opinion is about using that as a potential mechanism. It is not intended to bypass or undermine a planned approach to delivering housing development. Okay, it is very much the case that it is looking to use exceptions to the rule in order, in very specific circumstances, to generate a particular outcome. It certainly is not the case that development which would otherwise be wholly inappropriate would somehow get approved through this mechanism.
Right. Well,
thank you.
I was going to say sit on Madge's knee.
Very briefly, Leader, thank you for letting me speak. I specifically wanted to talk to the allocation for Clibberry Mortimer, because we're actually on the start of a neighbourhood plan where we're well into it and it's going exceedingly well. And we have huge community buy-in. A couple of points. The first point, hopefully, is very positive in the fact that Philip Hammond announced last week that he would look at 500 neighbourhood plans for developing open market housing at an affordable price for local people in perpetuity. So effectively, rather than we just have single site exception sites, we could have a cul-de-sac of 2-bedroom bungalows just for local people, sold on the open market as long as you've got a connection. It might be something our housing company wants to do, but I know in Clibberry Mortimer, starter homes and 2-bedroom bungalows will go down a bomb, especially for local people. We'll have the portfolios holders agreement that he'll look into this. I've already spoken to the neighbourhood plan team in Clibberry. They would love to be a pilot because it's exactly what they want. So it was released by the Treasury in the previous budget. My second point is, again, it is about the allocation of housing for Clibberry. And the neighbourhood plan team have taken on board very much so the 200 houses, although we've already got 62, I think it is already in the pipe. However, they are, like any of our really good local communities, whether they're small parishes or local market towns, they are very ambitious. And they want new infrastructure, they want a new community hub, they want new roundabouts, a link road and everything else. And I, like yourself, Leader, I want to congratulate specifically Eddie West, because he's spoken to, he's been out to Clibberry, spoken to the town council, we've had meetings here, and we've had very frank and open discussions. And what we actually came to the conclusion was, if we want to deliver what we actually want for the town, not on a 10-year plan, but a 20-year plan, 200 houses isn't going to be enough. We're going to need more. But we have one slight problem, which I will probably come to on the next paper, because both Madge and I were called in to the town council for an informal meeting, is they're up for having those houses, they're up for having that, but at the moment they do not trust this council that they will get the SIL to deliver it. And it is all about trust. And I'll leave it there, and I'll come back to that on the next paper. Thank you.
Yeah, just looking at the guidelines for Clibberry Mortimer, and it does talk about being determined by the neighbourhood plan in terms of where you go forward. So I think we're with you. I'm going to ask Rob Macy just to confirm that you're happy with the proceeds towards the local plan there?
In terms of the pilot that he's referencing and so on, we look at any government's pilot programs or anything else that comes together, and yeah, working with other agencies or pilot programs that are managed, we'll certainly look into those. Yeah.
Right. Joyce Barrow was next.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions. Would you like them all at once? Okay, the first one is page 30 in big print, 13 small print. There's a new option, item 2, delivering local needs cross-subsidy exception site, which is proposed around many settlements. Will there be a limitation on size as per NPPF paragraph 71 of 1 hectare or 5% of settlement size? That's the first question. Second one, the report mentions place shaping. Can you explain exactly what that means? And the third question is, my own area, which is Oswestry Rural Parish Council, are now, or have been put into hub status on this paper. They have just hit the 40 mark. If they lose any of the services, for instance, we've got a mobile library that goes to the village, which scores us points, even though it's not very often. If we lose that, will that take us out of hub status? If that happens, say, 2 or 3 years down the line, or the shop shuts. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, right. I'm guessing some of those I will pass over to Adrian Cooper to answer. I think in terms of the one I will pick up is the place shaping. It's something we mentioned, as a council, we mention place a lot. And whether it's place shaping, place plans and other things, and that's already been referred to. And I think from that point of view, it is about creating that collective sort of vision, and then that Willem's related to as well, of that collective vision of what are we looking for, whether it's housing, whether it's development, whether it's infrastructure, and understanding how those places work. We all know there's relationships between different settlements and so on and so forth. It's about really understanding that and taking the wide approach, involving the widest range of partners, whether it's the health sector, whether it's ourselves, and other things, to really get that what are we about, what do we need, and so on, and what can take us forward. So I don't know if Mark, you want to comment at all on place shaping, but it's other than that, I think the other two were for Adrian.
I think very, very quickly, I think place shaping is at the heart of all that we're trying to do through this paper and actually the previous paper, and back to the conversations with town and parishes at a local level. And in some ways, I think what this strikes a real balance on is celebrating the kind of rural diversity of Shropshire, and actually then working with people at a local level to do things that everybody wants and that community needs. Is in my view, place shaping as place making. So hopefully, this takes us a long way towards setting those plans in place.
I'm not. Oh.
Can I just clarify? Sorry. Can I just clarify something? It's Trevelyan which is being put into hub status. Obviously, not the whole of Oswestry Rural.
Right. Adrian, I'm going to talk about NPPF something or other.
Yeah. I think the point about the policy, we're obviously feeling our way with this. But it is not intended as a mechanism to generate vast new estates in inappropriate locations. We'll look very carefully at the appropriate size and scale of development in the context in which it's proposed. And certainly we will take account of that content in NPPF. Yeah. I think just to add on the place shaping point, I think I would want to celebrate in return the level of engagement and positive engagement particularly we've had with parish councils thus far in the process. Has been enormously rewarding and very, very helpful for the policy team to have that from parish councils, and we welcome it. With regard to Trevelyan specifically in the question that Councillor Barrows asked, if there should be a change before the plan is adopted, then there would be an opportunity to reflect that. I hope very much that that would not result in a pressure to remove or downgrade local services in a particular location. That would be, I think, a deeply unfortunate outcome for anywhere in Shropshire that's currently a service hub. As members will appreciate, we have tried to take a very almost fairly conventional approach in terms of identifying our settlement hierarchy this time round. is, we hope, clear, or evidently perhaps needs to be clarified further in light of earlier questions, but we think it's clear and it's consistent in the way in which it's been applied across the county. It looks at how places function and the services that are available to the population in those locations. And we have to take a consistent approach. And there are some places, like Trevonham, which only just make that status. But I really hope that it does not result in pressure to downgrade local services, and I think that would be a mistake.
Next was David Henry.
Yes, thank you. Two elements to what I want to say, really. First is really just to support comments that were made earlier about the excellence of this process and the involvement with not just the local members but the town council as well, as far as market rate is concerned. It's been an exemplary process, and I'm very much grateful for it. Please take my thanks back to the team, Adrian. The second part is almost ancillary to this, and it's directed at Adrian, and it's the whole issue of Turnhill. And I know we can't reflect it yet because we don't know what's going to happen to it. So that really is the question: how on earth are we going to respond when we know what's going to happen to Turnhill? Because at the moment, from what people are saying, the sort of allocation of market trading will be swallowed up entirely by Turnhill. It's estimated around about 600 pounds could be put there.
I think
we've got about 600 on the sites that we're identifying now. So how's it all going to work?
I think Adrian will give a more professional answer. My understanding is that Turnhill isn't included in anything, and the same with Bilborough Power Station. And if lots of houses appear there, they are extra to everything else that's being proposed.
Absolutely right, yeah, absolutely right. So we quite deliberately, when we've escaped your notice, or indeed notice of anybody in the room, that this proposed consultation looks at our existing market towns. It doesn't deal with sites like Ironbridge Power Station or Turnhill. And that is partly because those things are of a strategic nature. In the case of Turnhill particularly, they're not particularly developed at this stage as proposals. Even the timescale is as yet relatively unclear. And if we were to have counted those things towards delivering what our strategy requires us to do, there would be a risk that if they didn't come forward at the timescale we'd envisaged, we would leave ourselves open to challenge. But we weren't meeting our own needs because we were reliant on things that were not going to happen soon enough to help deliver that. So that's why there's been this separation between what's proposed and what's before you today and what will come to you next spring, which will look specifically at strategic sites. We hope by then it will be clearer what the timescales will be and what those sites might be able to offer us and what needs they would be helping to meet.
Right. Okay. Roger Evans was next.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome this because it is a concern to me that the timescale has been put back for this, and I note the small team that's there, the amount of work that they do. Congratulate them on the work that they have done. However, we are now running some months behind the original timescale. I'm aware the planning inspector, when they looked at our SAMDEV, was concerned for that one about the delays that had been incurred in producing it, and expected a new plan to be produced within 5 years. I do not want, and I don't think any member would want to revisit the 5-year land supply problems that we had before, which really superseded all our planning procedures. So I'm keen that we maintain it. I note the timescales there, but the reason I look at the portfolio holder, really, I suppose, is that is he content that the present personnel can actually deliver what is needed by next spring? I note it's spring and not a month, so spring can be a moving target as such, but December and then is for the planning inspector report. That is something that we need to hit. I'm concerned about the workload on our staff, and I'm concerned that we have encountered delays in coming here, and there's been several days when it's been brought here. And then finally on this one, I am very concerned about the exception site policy, which was referred to before. One of my villages isn't the same as Trevonham. came very late into the process to be made a hub, and its exception sites around it. And if I was a developer, I know what I would be looking at, and that may be throughout the county. And I'm disappointed there's no actual policy there about how to deal with exception sites, maximum, minimum, and do it. There's also the zoning of certain areas that we need to look at. There's one other point which will come to me in a moment, Chairman. I don't know if anybody wants to reply to those, and I'll think what else I was going to say.
I'll let you. Well, in terms of the resourcing, I mean, that to a point, and I'm going to look at officers here, that is going to the officers and the resourcing and so on. I will echo the fact of the work they are getting through is phenomenal. And the amount of work they are getting through is phenomenal, as evidenced by this document. They are also constantly, as we saw, we did change the timetable last year and so on, and that was to reflect the fact of the ongoing work. We don't know at that stage, it was based on the number of responses we had back. Again, with a consultation, you're not going to be able to judge that. So, I mean, I have complete confidence that the resources is there, and that if there ever were any issues, which I don't expect, that would be flagged. So, I mean,
the one thing Roger did talk about, which I don't think is an issue, if my understanding is right, is the 5-year land supply. I think we're pretty confident that we've got plenty of comfort in the numbers, that won't become an issue for a long time to come. I think, is that fair to say, Adrian?
Yes, I mean, our housing delivery is very good at the moment. We've got sort of consistently high level of delivery, well above the target level for the last 2 years, and that is a good sign in terms of general performance. So we're not at any immediate risk, and we have, I'm pleased to say, been able to demonstrate that we passed the government's new housing delivery test with flying colours, which is a good position to be in, a very positive position to be in. We will absolutely do our best. The reason we've had delays in bringing this report to Cabinet is really just, as you can see from the size of it, there is a great deal of work that's needed to justify and corroborate all of its content. And it's really important that we get that right and not come to you before it's ready. And that's the reason why it's been necessary to put it back, I'm afraid.
Roger, did you want to come back?
Yeah, if I can, Chairman. The 5-year land supply, the local plan is relevant, and I would not want it to be declared not relevant because of delays in bringing the new plan forward. That's where I'm coming from on that. But what I wanted was the hierarchical list of settlements and the point score. I've asked the question because one of my villages is just in, and the answer I obtained from Adrian was, just so that everybody here is aware, that the final deliberation on the numbers will be when it is made to the planning inspectorate. So if there's a change in numbers and the point score between now and December 2019, that's when the revision will be made, as I understand from Adrian, because, as I say, one of my villages is just over the top, and they're examining the score, and they may want to appeal the score. And I said, if there are any alterations, when can that be looked at, amended? And that's the answer I got from Adrian. And then there was reference earlier on about a task and finish group being set up to look at the hierarchy and the point scoring and how it was arrived at. Did I misunderstand that earlier on at this meeting?
Claire?
I said that.
Claire said that.
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah. We'll see what the scrutiny process raises. Adrian?
Yeah, it is, just for clarity, the latest scoring, the scoring that has been used to inform the content which is in this consultation document will be published at the same time as the rest of the document. So everybody will be able to see how the outcomes have been arrived at. Okay? That was, we will still be discussing what exactly, how the scoring's been applied and so on, as per some of the earlier public questions, but it will all be in the public domain. If that changes, then that can be reviewed. But as I said in answer to Councillor Barrow's question, I really hope that there isn't downward pressure, as it were, on local services as a result of that.
That would be unfortunate. Councillor Harry Taylor was next.
Thank you, Leader. Just a general concern really from the Labour group that last year the Cabinet supported the high growth option for housing, when the majority of people supported moderate growth. So we hope that we're not going as a council for the highest option because we're seeking purely a higher council tax receipt instead of putting due weight on the impact on our green spaces as well as our existing infrastructure.
It's certainly not about council tax, because actually the theory that having more houses gives us extra income doesn't work, because if you look at the way local government finance is, because we rely on government and other sources of income, council tax is only a very small proportion of what it costs us. So actually when a house is built, we don't actually make any profit out of it. We're lucky if the council tax they pay it actually is enough to cover the cost of the services that they use. If you think about it, the whole package of money we get from various sources, so we get government funding for various things, so you get an extra house, but you don't get any extra government funding for that house. Yeah, but that's not necessarily enough to cover the whole cost. Yeah, so it's a very, but we certainly don't make lots of money out of the profit of council tax. It doesn't work like that at all. Right, that was all on my list. Anybody else want to comment? Oh, sorry, Madge.
I thought you were going to miss me then. I'll be brief because a lot of things have already been said which were my concern with this. Just to thank certainly Adrian for input into this general Housing Advisory Committee, because there are a number of points that I've always felt key workers is one thing, because despite the fact that in my patch we are just a key centre and we're not a hub, so we're a key centre with lots of clusters, we do have some very thriving small businesses there, and they do need key workers, and that's a really essential thing for us. The other thing, of course, we're also very short of is transport, and when it comes to whether it's housing, schools, health or businesses, we need a higher level of transport in our peculiar geographical position, which is tucked at the bottom of the Brown and Clees and next to the Worcestershire border, who aren't always as helpful as they could be. I welcome very much the emphasis that's been expressed around this room to make it clear to parish and town councils, because the document I'm looking at the moment, which is obviously from my own patch, but it's page 91, where it clearly states that Hibbing Waterham itself, which provides most of the services, whether it's health or, I think the only thing we're minus now is the police, and we rarely see them anyway, so we have to put up with that, I suppose. But all I'm saying is it's important that the parish and town councils who are in the clusters do understand what their role is, and I don't think they do. But I'm comforted by what I've heard around the table and in this room today, and I will take to the Parish and Town Council Association AGM and conference on Friday evening the fact that we have got a lot of support in Shropshire Council, because I think there are many of them who sometimes feel bewildered, abandoned, or, well, Madge, it's all too complex and the wording keeps changing and the emphasis and nuances from that wording actually makes it quite difficult to them. When we come to the production of houses, I wear another hat of a very small rural housing association, and we're often offered by developers 2 or 3 houses so that they can tick one of their boxes. But the size and design and quality of these houses leaves an enormous amount to be desired, and to be perfectly honest, we often say, no thank you very much, pal, I don't think we want those. So I think there is a role with the council is to say to these developers, just because they're going to be social housing for rent, don't think you can get away with the dog kennel. I wouldn't put my dog in some of them, to be quite honest, he's very fussy. I just want to emphasise with that, I think I've got most of those points down, I don't want to go waffling on, but it does comfort me that the town and parish council information is clear and concise, not over-egged with words, not have pretty bows put on it, but some nice, sharp, concise and precise bullet points, and I think then they will understand, and they will grasp. If there is a way of doing it, they will grasp it. One last point, and I can't possibly miss this one out. If a development has taken place, and I don't care whether it's a development for housing or whether it's a development for a business, for instance, the construction of a new shop, for instance, that when there is a planning condition there, that it is exercised and completed in a timely manner. because I would not like to see a debacle that we're just going through at the moment. And I will speak to you, Chief Executive, if you'll allow me at the end of this meeting, 10 minutes, it'll do it.
I'm aware of your issue with crossings.
Oh yes, it's the system, the timeliness. There's a missing link here, Chairman, and we need to identify it, or else we are going to lose money that those developers, whatever it was, have put in. We are going to lose that money, and frankly, we haven't got replacement money for that particular bit of the planning condition. Thank you.
The one comment I would make is consistent with what you're saying about Cleveland. There are transport issues along around the borders of the county in quite a number of areas where I've visited, but they're not easy to resolve because we do tend to rely on other councils to help us, and it doesn't always work cross-border as easily as you think. So, but we are trying it. Yeah, and this is an excellent document, and I think it is very readable. It's not wrapped in such words that people shouldn't be able to understand it. The town parishes, as they read this, should be able to understand exactly what it's saying, so I do commend it to everyone. Rob?
It was only briefly come back on a couple of those points, and one of them was about the fact of there's not a full exception policy in there. So all we're trying to clearly lay down is we need to put down a marker that if we carry on with what we're doing, we will get the same things. And we'll get the same things directly in response to the discussions that have been had and from feedback from town and parish councils that they need and they want something different. So we've got to look at this differently. So I know we're doing consultation on policies later in the year, and it really is this early marker of getting the feedback of, is this one we really should work up and go with. The only other points was, thank you very much, around the language and the rest of it, I completely agree. And as you've picked up already from my first two items, because we have all these things coming forward at once, there really is an opportunity for everybody to be clear on the language, the roles that people are playing, the fact of there are other partners, you mentioned health and others as well. We need to get all these people to the table to come up with something that everyone can buy into, and then absolutely we go out and we have a plan of how we're going to deliver that. I think that would help all the communities, and that runs through pretty much everything that's on the agenda today. So,
right, there are some recommendations on page 11, A and B. They're pretty straightforward. That basically we send this document out for consultation. So, can I see all those in favour, please? That's clearly approved. Right, thank you very much. We move on to item 9, Community Infrastructure Levy, Regulation 123 list. Right, Councillor Macy again.
And again, as I say, they're all on a theme today. Community Infrastructure Levy, or SIL as it's more commonly known, is one of the ways in which developers can be asked to contribute towards the infrastructure requirements relating to development. This report seeks Cabinet approval for critical and strategic additions to the Council's SIL Regulation 123 list, and to agree indicative spend allocations for these projects. The recommendations are set out in part 2 of the report, and the numbers 1 to 3. I think in terms of my introduction to this, I think I will move that, and I think it's actually probably more useful to take questions on the subject rather than go through management.
So I'll second it so it's live and right, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. This really gives me great problems. I think the way the parish and town councils have been treated on this is disgusting. No way to treat any other body. We would not want to be treated like that at this council. There's reference there about a meeting in July 2015. Parish and town councils were never consulted. I'm not sure that even this council was consulted, where Cabinet changed its policy or changed the way it was doing it. It's attempting to do it again now. I see there's £2 million, for example, for the Shrewsbury Integrated Transport Package, and it's referring to a previous decision that it can go forward. Well, the July 2015 decision never went to council. £2 million to be spent on the Shrewsbury Integrated Transport Package. I didn't think the Cabinet had the authority to transfer £2 million. I thought £1 million was the maximum the Cabinet could do to alter things, and £500,000 officers, and Cabinet £1 million. And to spend £2 million out of the structure on the transport package, I think people would have made comments about it. So this here, this 1, 2, 3 list here, as I say, it's, to me, parish and town councils did understand it. They fully understood the decisions they made in the Sandow came forward and the way that SIL was going to be used. No communication has been had with them. I have raised it a number of times at many different meetings here and in council about the information for parish and town councils. If one looks on the council website and puts in SIL in the search, you see that it's there, and the local will be spent in the community where the development takes place. What is proposed here is that it will take place in the local plan area. But I represent an area outside of Shrewsbury. All my SIL, if this is adopted, would go to build a school or something like that in the centre of Shrewsbury, where none of the children in my community are able to access, because it's not in their catchment area. And there are various and a large number of this throughout the county. And the parish and town councils have got motions at their AGM on Friday, and also down for discussion at the town and parish forum later on. But there is wide upset amongst the town and parish councils. The way they've been treated is abominable. They should be there at the table talking. They can be responsible organisations. They would want to be involved in strategic discussions and discussions in Shropshire Council on how to provide those important things that we all use. But to be treated and told, you're not having any of it.
Okay, I made the point. I have to say, I go to as many parish councils meetings as anybody in this room, and it's a very mixed view. Some town parishes are very supportive of what we're doing, some are very critical, and it's a mixed bag. So it's not all one way or the other. And I do go to lots of parishes. Who have I got next? Willumba.
Thank you, Leader. I come in peace. It's interesting, I've been giving this a lot of thoughts, and you know that I've circulated a lot of my personal opinions on SIL, and I just wanted to start by having a bit of a reflection on the journey that we've been on over the last 9 years. And as I look around this table, there's probably roughly, if we've got half a dozen people who've been on that journey, that's all we have. So what we have to also remember that we have our major partners who've been on that journey, which are the town and parish councils. I was fortunate enough in 2009 to be a cabinet member for communities, and I worked very strongly with Jake Berryman and Mal Bryce, who I have a huge amount of respect for, in actually formulating this policy. And this wasn't just about SIL, this was building up, following going unitary, this was about building up new relationships with our town and parish councils, enabling them to deliver local services and to become more sustainable, and it was also to encourage them to have development and have reward for that development in the community where it was delivered. I've also sat on the Task and Finish group for SIL since it was started. I don't have a problem with the 1, 2, 3 list. We need the 1, 2, 3 list. I just think we have actually walked into the law of unintended consequences, and we haven't got the money in the right place to actually deliver the 1, 2, 3 list. But what we have to do now is to come up to a solution whereby we can get the money in the right place with the 1, 2, 3 list. But we have to do that in a way where we take our partners with us. When we started the Task and Finish group, we were advised by the senior officers of the council at that time that we could not change any historic SIL money that had been allocated to towns or parishes, or any planning permissions that had been granted, because that was history. We could only look at changing policy, moving forward for new applications, and we looked at all sorts of options for that we didn't give them so much money, we increased the strategic pot. And then about a few months back, 6-12 months ago, we had a change of officers. And it is my heartfelt opinion that it is just the way the policy has been read. I don't believe working with Mal Price in the previous administration, that he ever meant for it to go unanimously straight across to where the council wanted it in the place plan areas. We always said that if place plan A has got X thousands of pounds but it needs to be spent in B, we would negotiate with A to do it. We wouldn't just tell them, and there had to be beneficial reason for us doing that. So the real issue here is that you, Leader, and Cabinet, it is up to you how you read that policy, and it is up to you how you actually deliver to your town and parish councils. My advice is we leave historic Sill where it is, and we negotiate on a town-by-town basis if it needs to be used for critical issues elsewhere. And as we move forward, we have a task and finish group, possibly with key allies from those town and parishes who feel hurt and bruised, so they can help us develop the future policy that needs to be delivered, not just in Shrewsbury and Oswestry. Only once this morning I heard the word rural, and that came from Professor Barrow. There is a big county out there, and I want confirmation from Cabinet and the Leader that we are doing this for the whole of the county, and we need to take those partners with us. I'm happy to work forward on the task and finish group. Thank you.
You're sort of covering a lot of things, and one of my problems is I came into this late in the process, and I've had to pick up the reins from decisions that had previously been made, and we're trying to resolve a sensible way forward. What I have done, and I agree with you, I think there has been a change in the way we interpret some of the rules. And I don't know what the briefing notes going out, not all yet, but you'll know from the discussion we had the other evening. I do believe the neighbourhood pot, which goes directly... No, well no, but I'm saying this so everybody's clear. The neighbourhood pot, which goes directly to parish councils and is paid to them yearly, and they have the money, they should have quite a bit of freedom to spend that how they wish, but their own audit process will check to make sure it's being spent in the correct way. I think as a council we should give them a degree of freedom to do that, and their own audit process will then pick up whether the money is being spent correctly within guidelines, because there are some guidelines about how that money should be spent. And I think the guidelines for the neighbourhood pot is slightly looser than for the local pot, and it's the local pot that we need to review. Now, today's decisions are about the SIL 1, 2, 3 list, and we need to, because what we need to do is start spending SIL money. There's a huge amount of SIL money in the bank, and it's not being spent at parish level or at county level, and we've got to start the process, we've got to start releasing that money and let it be spent for everybody's benefit. So that's why I'm making the point about the neighbourhood pot, because even with the neighbourhood pot, at the moment there's about 2.4 million sitting in all the separate pots around the county, and it's not being spent. So there is a degree of freedom that money should start being spent. But the 1, 2, 3 list we talked today is more about one or two of the bigger items that we think need to, a lot around education, also around sewerage and Whitchurch, etc. And I think those are vital and need to go forward. So I think there's that. But the other recommendations are talking about how we address SIL in the future, and having the task and finish group to further task and finish group meetings are arranged to discuss the broader issues around SIL funding arrangements and place plans, how best to communicate and consult with town and parish council regarding SIL funding arrangements and the place plan. So I acknowledge what you're saying, and we are starting to do that. And I think we have been, the process hasn't been as good as it has been to the local plan review, should we say.
Can we just come back? I don't think there is a bit of a problem with the neighbourhood plan and what they can spend it on the neighbourhood plan, the neighbourhoud pot, but that's by the by. It is definitely the SIL local. If I go back to what I said about our neighbourhood plan, the town and the town council and the neighbourhood plan group now are like this, whether they should have more houses or less, because they don't know whether they're going to get the SIL. They don't know, would an extension to the burial site in Clippery Mortimer, which is desperately needed, would they get the SIL for that, or would the money go for a classroom in Ludlow? This is the questions every asked now, and that is totally unfair. It has to stay where it is.
And that's the debate that is going on, as you're very well aware, and we are trying to resolve it so that we get it, the money spent more locally, as it happens to be more to have their own place plan area anyway. So
there's 8 other parishes as well, but we're still saying it could be moved out of that. But coming back to you, leader, this has only changed very recently, and this is not what Malcolm has put the policy to say. And it is up to you and Cabinet to read the policy as you want to read it.
And we are trying to unpick it because we don't want to change it, but it's a lot of it is about interpretation.
Absolutely.
And that's where we're trying to
And all of a
resolve
sudden,
issues.
it's been flipped on its lid. Thank you.
I don't know whether Rob wanted to comment on that.
Really, it's a case of I appreciate Gwilym's been on the journey since the start of it, and journey probably is the right word of this. And as we see, as we're looking at local plans and so on, everybody's on this, all partners are on this, especially town and parish councils who are on the ground. And I think in terms of the 1, 2, 3 list and you talk about unintended consequences, then yeah, I mean in terms of that can fit. What I would say is, in terms of what's in front of Cabinet today, I think those are projects that are based in areas that have taken development, they have seen high levels of development, and that development, I think it's fair to say, when you look at the record delivery of housing completions over the past 2 years, the timescale for those has really accelerated, so they need to be met. I think from the point of view of, I'm happy to make this offer in terms of what they're doing. Within the recommendations are a specific number of projects, and they have indicative spend against them. That's one of the recommendations. I certainly, as portfolio holder, would have no issue for the Task and Finish group, or whoever, as we know, Task and Finish groups are able to invite, I'm looking to Claire for this, Task and Finish groups are able to invite others to take part, which I would leave to them. If they wanted to look at those specific projects and how the breakdown of SIL, the final breakdown of SIL was looking at, feed into that process, that's something I'd certainly be comfortable with.
I'm happy to have a discussion about whether a Task and Finish group should report directly to Cabinet or through the scrutiny process, and I'll have a talk with you about that, which you think is the best way forward, because there are 2 alternative ways of taking it. What I don't want it to seem like is that Cabinet is taking over everything and just doing it. I do want the scrutiny process to work.
At the present time, it reports to performance management, which would be great to see some Cabinet there, so they can actually listen to what the reports actually say. I take on board what you're saying, Robert, and thank you for that. The major issue is historic SIL and future SIL. What we do in the future, the Parish and Town Council are open to negotiation to have less, so we don't have this situation in 4 or 5 years' time. But we cannot say, we've sent them a SIL list for the last 6 years saying you've got X amount in your SIL, and now all of a sudden we're saying, oh, I'm sorry, you haven't got that anymore because we're going to spend it over there. Yeah. It's contemptible.
I think the way we're viewing it is certainly, and I think, as you say, there is that recognition of what do we do going forward, and I think we do need to, in terms of reset the conversation, and it needs to feed into all of these. Absolutely, the thing around the previous money needs to be part of that conversation, and I think, yeah, there needs to be my expectation. The big bit going through all of this that is quite clear is this is only ever intended to deliver a smaller part of the infrastructure. What has slightly been missing from this at the moment is the full place plans that are published as part of the local plan include contributions from the water companies, from all the others and so on. And actually it's not about, in terms of we do need to deliver the infrastructure, there are certain pots of funding, it's how we get there. To the point of communities, going back to the point of they want it delivered. To be honest, how it's funded is a consideration, but at the end of the day, if we are doing this place shaping and we are delivering that infrastructure through whichever means it is, it gets there. But I appreciate
moving forward.
Yeah, I appreciate this.
I've heard what
That's
you
where
said.
we are. And I'm trying to reflect that. And I know where we're at.
I want to move on. The Chief Executive.
We did have a discussion around this at scrutiny, Gwilym, and you may recall, I just want to reiterate that the officers of this council will carry out the policy of the members in whatever way that they want. So whether it's interpretation or whether we need new policy, when we get policy, we'll carry it out to the full extent of that policy in the way it's set out.
I'm not sure we actually need new policies. I think a lot of it is about interpretation.
I go back to the point I made, Lee, that it's down to you, Cabinet Leader, to deliver that policy as you see fit for the whole of the Shropshire, both historically what's been delivered and what's going to happen in the future, and to communicate it in a good way. And thank you for the time, Lee.
Right. Moving on, Simon Harris was next.
Thank you, Leader. I will try and be brief and quiet. I think you lot have heard me enough this week of this subject. Yeah, it has been a long journey. I've been on this journey with Sill Money for the last 3 years, not only as the ward member for Broseley, but as the mayor, visiting various meetings. And I thank Robert Macy for listening to me over the cemetery jobs and, of course, the Virgin Meadow Park. There is a massive confusion over this. I've even brought councillors to Shire Hall to meet the officers. One councillor expected to pick a cheque up on the day. I've got one saying to take the money and run. I don't know how he's going to get the money. And I've got one resident that confused. I'm not sure whether he knows the difference between SIL and PPI. I thank you for the real conversation and the way that you're going to, especially the letters that have gone out this week, the documents. I think that was a brilliant thing that turned out. And the other thing that is, on Tuesday night, this coming Tuesday, we are having officers from Shropshire Council come to visit Broseley Town Council to talk just about this subject, listen to their woes, and hopefully we will have a way forward on that. Thank you.
Okay. Lee Chapman was next.
Yeah, it was the detail relating to the difference between policy and interpretation of policy, and I think my question's been covered.
Nick, did you? No, right, I've got the other Nick then. Nick Bardsley.
Thank you, Leader. Just a very quick comment on the large amounts of money and the large number of projects for schools. I make no apology for the fact that schools are taking priority. We have a statutory duty to provide classroom space. What isn't in this report, of course, is that the original sums of money to come out of SIL were very substantially larger than the list of funding here. I'm pleased to say that with a lot of help from Robert Macy and also my deputy Ed Potter, and indeed from the officer team, the take from the SIL pot has very substantially reduced because other funds were available to fund some of these classroom extensions. Just a little bit of background, although we have across the whole of Shropshire still got an issue with a declining school population, it isn't evenly spread, and here in Shrewsbury and also in large parts of North Shropshire, the school population is expanding, and that's why we need these additional classrooms. I do have a question for the portfolio because, as you can see, an awful lot of this is for education with some major projects as well. I'm rather hoping, and I'd be glad if you could confirm, that some smaller scale highways and transport projects can come forward. I know that many town and parish councils would like to see some small scale highways projects getting approval.
Right, do you want to respond?
Yeah, certainly in terms of, and that's probably a point worth clarifying, is the fact of if a scheme, if a project is not on this list, that's not saying we can't spend SIL on it and it can't come forward. We are saying that, there will be others. In the report itself, it refers in a couple of places during section 5, paragraphs 5.9 to 5.12, about the fact of we are expecting projects to be identified through the updated place plans and so on that may still be funded by SIL. We particularly made reference to the fact of there may be projects for highways and so on, because that is one of the subjects the town and parishes have raised with us. That's one of the practical, on-the-ground things they would like us to consider, and they've identified as well in terms of that.
Rob Gittins.
Thank
you, Leader. I thought you were going to miss me out there.
I wouldn't do that.
I would like to take this opportunity to raise several concerns I have over this report. I question the value for money aspect of the figures within the report relating to the new classrooms has been most excessive simply for consultation and a few bricks. And I think everyone would be most keen to see a full breakdown of these most exuberant costs. I'm only we are pimping these classrooms out with gold-plated brick. Why are schools in towns a greater priority than schools in rural areas? One of the officers clearly stated in our briefing last week that an increase in housing means an increase in school places required. But every 100 houses means an increase of 15 to 20 pupils. Hinstock has had well in excess of 100 houses built, yet they seem to have been completely bypassed in this whole process as all the money runs off into Market Drayton. And as a result, the school is full to bursting point. Let's not discriminate against rural areas.
Yeah.
And finally, parish and town councils want certainty. I want certainty. And I'm not sure that I'm the only Shropshire councillor that wants certainty. Parish and town councils have been mucked around, had the goalposts moved on them, and have been left with a trail of broken promises by this council. Some parish councils feel like this council has unilaterally declared war on them. We pulled up the drawbridge, we've refused to communicate, we've completely failed to engage with them, and above all, we've completely breached their trust. But it's not too late. We have a fantastic opportunity to all work together and get this fixed. Not next week, not next month, not next year, but right now. But we need to bring town and parish councils with us on this journey. We need to communicate better. Let's all work together to find an agreement which is fair for everyone, whether you live in a town or in a rural area. The Cabinet can start to a day by honouring its past commitments. I'm sure town and parish councils would see this as an act of good faith on our part. And above all, it would be the right thing to do.
Okay, I think Nick wanted to respond to some of that.
Well, just very specifically on the point about the cost of some of these projects, I think Councillor Gittins knows that I share a great deal of his concern over that. And if it's some comfort to him, when Councillor Macy and Councillor Potter and I started to look at this list, the sums were even more astronomical than they are now. Some of those projects actually are already complete, so there's nothing much we can do about that. For those that are still in the pipeline, I make no bones about it, we lent very heavily on the officers to justify some of the numbers. Some of those numbers have come down quite steeply. Even so, like Councillor Gittins, I think they're very high, and I think that in future we perhaps need to start looking at these project costs much earlier in the day rather than being presented with something that looks a bit like a fait accompli.
And I don't expect an answer now, but can you take away the concern about Hinstock School? Because I hadn't heard that one. I hear about lots of schools and various, but I hadn't heard